So hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Chinmay and you are watching a part of Coding My Own Tech Startup series. And in this video, I'm going to explain my last video which I made on microservices architecture based project to make CRUD operations using NestJS and Docker. That video was in Hindi and this video is going to be in English or in Hindi both. So hey, okay. So let's talk about it. In the last video, I showed you that how you can set up a project for microservices based architecture to build CRUD operations for any project using NestJS and Docker. So in this video, I'm going to explain how API gateway and different microservices works all together in NestJS application. This is a very easy flow. If you understand these diagrams and blocks and arrows, then you will be able to get like how easy it to write code. So I think first I should have done this video and then I should the video I have already done the previously, but it's fine. If you understood that video, then you can watch it, that you will be having a better understanding for microservices architecture using NestJS. And if you haven't watched that video yet, then first you can watch this, then you can go to that video, then it will be very easy for you to understand like how this is working at all. Okay, so basically last time I told you that there is a API gateway which handles the request from the client and then route that request to appropriate microservices based upon the client's request, or like based upon the URL request URL coming from the client. So API gateway accept client request and then route it through the controller to the appropriate microservice. So how it route it, so like how this API gateway route or send your request to appropriate microservices. It uses a message queue or message broker. All messages and event sending and receiving actions are being done by message and broker. So this API gateway use a message broker or message queue when we are using RabbitMQ. So RabbitMQ क्या करता है? RabbitMQ just like we use RabbitMQ, like we set RabbitMQ here in API modules. These are modules file of the API gateway app, which is a app in a monorepo made by NestJS. Okay, so in the controller of the API gateway, we send events to the appropriate microservices. So basically there are, each and every microservice, like this feedback service and auth service, each and every microservice has to subscribe to a particular event and using the same queue. So basically if this auth service is subscribed to these three events, get user event, login user event, sign up user, in the queue called auth queue, and at the same time if this service also has subscribed to the same queue for the same event, then whenever a request will come and if the API gateway will emit any of these event, this will notify immediately or send an event or a payload to auth service and the feedback service, and then both the services will receive the event in their controller and get the appropriate messages from or the appropriate services or the functions from their feedback services or the auth services file, and then execute the logic and will send response and then will send response to the user. So this feedback service is a separate service. In NestJS, whenever you make a service, you have to make controller, module and services. In services file, we have the functions or the business logic. In feedback controller we have routing, okay, like what we need to do. Services, how we need to do. Feedback modules handles like database connection, microservices connection, ORM layer connection and all. So there two services I have mentioned, auth service and the feedback service. This is API gateway. Okay, so this API gateway will emit event in its controller, which is get user, and because auth service subscribe to this get user event using the auth queue, the controller of auth service will get notified whenever this event will be emitted by this API gateway. Then this service will receive this event and do the appropriate business logic with the help of the auth service. So auth service is having all the business logic, controller having like what to do, this is having how to do. So whenever get user event will come, it will call the get user function from here, it will do the logic and will send back to the client. Same this will do. If feedback services is registering a queue called feedback queue. Okay, so feedback queue. So whenever API gateway will emit an event get feedback in feedback queue, and this feedback service has subscribed to feedback queue to get feedback event, then whenever this event will get emitted from here, the controller of the feedback service will accept the event here and will do appropriate logic or the business logic with the feedback services functions, and then will send back response to the client. That's how services work in real time. So I can show you this in my code. Okay, so as I said, this is the API gateway and this is a controller. So this is the API gateway, this is the controller, and this is get user event we are generating. So we are sending to the auth service, we are sending and get user event, and here auth service have a subscribe to get user event. How? You can go to the auth service controller, and here this has subscribed to get users event already. So this event is getting emitted by here get users, and here auth service is subscribed to this event. So whenever this event will get sent from here, will be received at here, and then this in the auth service controller, it is calling a method from auth services. So this auth get user, this method lies in the get services here, auth services. This is a auth service get user method. This is the method, and this is returning something like data from the database. So this will send the data to here, and from here we will send this data to the client. So that's how it works. From here we have generated an event, auth service subscribed to that event, did the appropriate logic and sent response to the client. Same for feedback services. Okay, so here we have to generate in API gateway in the feedback controller. Here we'll be having different controllers for different services. So here we are having in API gateway controller for feedback service. So here we have to check. Okay, so this will generate and get feedback event or create feedback event. Okay, so this create feedback event will be generated from here create feedback, and will be received from here feedback services from the feedback queue. And I can tell you the feedback queue is here. This is the feedback queue. You'll get all the feedback related events. Auth queue will get all the auth related events. So here feedback controller in API gateway send create feedback event, which is this, and here in feedback service controller, this feedback service controller will receive the event create feedback here, and will call the message from feedback service, which is this create the event feedback service, and will do the appropriate logic and will send back to the controller, and the controller will send back to the client. So that's how in NestJS microservice architecture works very easily. If you understand these diagrams and things, then you can write code very easily. It's extremely easy to add a new service to this microservice based project to make CRUD operations. So in the next video after this, we will be adding another service called a user service or a rating service in this microservice based project while writing code. So now I have explained the architecture or the flow diagram or the diagrams or the block diagram or the basic structure. In the next video we'll be writing code to add a new service from here. So you will get it's very easily how you can add a service or how you can register for a service in API gateway if we are doing microservices based project using NestJS and Docker. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.